Aloha and welcome back to the Kupuna Connections television series. I'm Cullen Hayashida, the co-host for this program. And today we have a wonderful discussion about driver safety, particularly with the work that has been done with the AARP driver safety program. With me are my co-hosts and my guests, so I'd like to have everybody start out by introducing themselves.
Okay. My name is Tony Hathaway, and I'm at the Kupuna Education Center at Kapi'olani Community College, and I'm the education coordinator.
And my name is Bruce Batorf. I'm the Associate State Director at AARP Hawaii, Associate State Director for Communications.
Welcome, Bruce. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, we have a very interesting topic about driving for seniors. There's a lot of issues having to do with warning signs and some questions about when to stop and some tips, do's and don'ts about driving for driver safety, of course. And of course, the AARP program is well known for the work that it's been doing as far as driver safety. We want to start out initially with some questions about, what are some trends that you can share with us with regards to age and drivers and what statistics are, is telling us today?
Well, thanks, Cullen, and thanks for having me. It's a very important topic. We can start with the trend of how quickly the 60-plus population is growing. It's the fastest growing segment of the population in America. And, across the country, 65-plus currently accounts for about 12% of the population, and in the next couple of decades will increase to about 20%.
I think we have a slide that shows that.
Right. Well, actually, that's the national one. And here in Hawaii, we are even above that. We are currently about 14% of the population, that's 65-plus population. And in the next 20 years, we're going to increase, actually in the next 10 or so, we'll be up around 22%. So about 2% more than the rest of the country.
Yes. And so what else can we say with regards to this trend?
Well, one thing I'd like to say right off the bat is we're not concerned about the fact that drivers are getting older, because older drivers tend to have very good safety records. They practice generally very good behavioral kinds of things. For example, they don't, on average, they don't tend to drink and drive, they don't tend to speed, and they don't engage in some of the more reckless behaviors that, if you will, some of our younger population members might. They, by and large, obey the speed limit, and for the most part, a lot of older drivers tend to limit, especially as they get really older, they tend to limit their driving time to daytime hours, and they tend to like to drive in surroundings that they are familiar with. So there are a lot of things to say about the safety, if you will, of older drivers. Having said that, there is a predisposition as you get older to have certain physical and cognitive kinds of issues that will tend to delay your motor skills and cause you perhaps to have a little bit more challenging time behind the wheel. One startling statistic, we have a slide on this, is that in the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found a couple of years ago that for two crashes that involved two vehicles involving one older driver and one younger driver, the older driver's vehicle is twice as likely to be the one that was struck. This again indicates to us that older drivers tend on average to be safer, if you will, than a lot of other portions of the population.
They're not burning rubber.
For the most part, not. Of course, we have the baby boomers who are, getting in their second wind, and we can talk about that a little later.
Well, how does age affect our driving ability?
Well, we also have a slide on the fact that medical conditions, frailty, age-related kinds of changes can increase the chances of having crashes and injuries and so forth. You see the slide here. So take medications, for example. A lot of people, once they hit age 65 and older, That's not a magic demarcation point by any means, but generally speaking, as you get to be that age, you do tend to be taking a prescription drug perhaps or two. And obviously medications can dramatically affect one's ability to drive the way you should. This same slide indicates, by the way, that there are 500 older adults involved in crashes every day. That's a startling statistic. We can expect it perhaps to increase as the population increases and the number of people behind the wheel. I'm sorry, I didn't actually read off the cue earlier, but something like 1 out of every 4 drivers, was it?
Yes.
By the age, is going to be age 65 and older by the time we get to 2030. So that's a concern.
Yeah. So how do we ensure safety on our roads as the number of older adults increases?
Well, it's not one magic bullet, if you will, as you can imagine. It's a number of things. First and foremost, and I'm going to be kind of repeating this as we go on throughout the session, I think families really have to kind of take responsibility for their elder members, to talk with them and to be engaged in what is really a very, very emotionally charged issue. That is, when should an elder member of the family hang up the car keys? Obviously, mobility is such a tremendously important aspect of one's independence at any age.
Yeah.
You can imagine just how touchy a subject this is and how reluctant one is, regardless of physical or cognitive abilities, to give up that responsibility. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a
I'm
very
sorry.
big issue.
Yeah.
You lose your independence. You know, for some people, it's almost like chopping your legs off, in a sense, because of your inability to get around as readily as you wanted to.
I mentioned families first and foremost because AARP's perspective on the issue of older driving is that we should not necessarily look to government to come in and regulate older drivers. We believe there should be a standard kind of test for people of all ages to conform to. And the reason for that is very simple. We're all living longer these days. We're tending to live healthier. And what someone's health is at age 75 for you may be very different from your counterpart, a neighbor down the street. There are plenty of people in their 90s and in their hundreds who can operate a motor vehicle quite safely. Having said that, there are plenty of people in their 80s who perhaps shouldn't be behind the wheel anymore. So it's not like we can say this is the magic age beyond which we shouldn't allow people to drive, or that we should heighten government regulations in terms of more testing and more stringent requirements and so forth.
So it's not just about age, it's really about the condition and how your mobility, your sight, some other issues that affect age as well.
Well, there's no question about it. Maintaining your health as you get older is the number one key to happiness and fulfillment in all aspects of life, not just the wheel. But certainly in terms of this very important privilege of driving, which is a social responsibility as well, because you're responsible not only for yourself and your family, but for maintaining the safety of your community. So health is number one. So if you are aware as an older person that your eyesight is fading, obviously the natural thing to do is to go to your doctor and ask about changing your prescription, getting glasses if you don't have them, and so forth. If you feel at the same time that your arthritis is starting to bother you, you need also to be aware of that, and you need to be aware of how that might affect your ability to function behind the wheel.
Right. Well, let's talk about some of these warning signs that perhaps families should be aware of. And it really takes that observation, perhaps, that people need. Can you provide us with some of these warning signs? And I have a slide for this.
Yes, thanks. Again, this is not something that you would necessarily notice yourself as much as a family member might help you to kind of flag as a warning signal. So, for example, if you're living near your mother and father or grandma and grandpa, and you notice over time that they begin to act a little bit more nervous behind the wheel, that's one sign. Obviously, if you begin to see dings and dents and scrapes, not only on the car, but on the mailbox, on the curb outside the house.
Even in the garage itself.
On the garage itself. And again, these are sort of common sense things, but
right.
You know, oftentimes we don't, in this busy work-a-day kind of fast-paced world that we're in, we don't often say, well, you know, I should be keeping my eye on my family members who are behind the wheel. But these are kinds of things that common sense you should watch out for. That we can go back to that slide if you want and kind of go down the list.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're driving with your family members, you want to make sure that they're able to stay in their lanes. That's a pretty common sense thing.
Right.
That they are not getting lost. You know, this is a really interesting one because Americans and people in Hawaii at the same like to travel. And oftentimes we want to go to the mainland on a trip or something. Obviously, you're not necessarily going to know your way around unless you're going to Vegas or someplace like that, where we often go. But you want to make sure that you know that there is not a kind of a disorientation behind the wheel, indicated by perhaps a lack of familiarity with the regular road or circumstances that that person is driving in. So getting lost is really a major signal.
Concern.
Yeah. Another one of the warning signals that you want to watch out for is that your elders able to pay attention. For most of us, driving is not something that we concentrate on. But as you get older, you really have to concentrate a little bit more to just the basics of driving, not only the mechanics inside the car itself, but also the ability to notice signals, road signals, changing of red and light, people who are perhaps pedestrians, of course, walking across the street, pavement markings and things of that nature. And as I may have mentioned earlier, there are so many distractions around us today, the cell phones and things of that nature. Finally, slower response to the unexpected. You know, things happen when you're driving. Somebody can suddenly dart out from a side road, and the response time is, in some cases, slowed as you get older.
We got a lot of pedestrians that are walking with cell phones in hand, not even looking at the
well,
traffic.
that's right. And when you're near a school zone in particular,
Absolutely.
You want to be absolutely mindful that a kid could come running out across the street thinking, and these are the kinds of situations that you want to really observe your elder in and make sure that they're okay.
Yeah, when you think about it, the car is, you know, well, more than 2,000 pounds, right? So
That's right.
It's like a weapon in a sense if you don't pay attention to
That's
that.
right. The car will always win the battle between a human being and the
Absolutely.
vehicle, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, you know, you were talking about families, and one of the things I've heard from families is, you know, the elder might say, well, my one daughter says that I shouldn't be driving, but she doesn't drive with me, so she doesn't have any credibility when she says that to the elder. So I think that's one thing to encourage families to do, is to drive with the elder. Get in the car with them and see how they're doing.
I think that's a very good point. I mean, unless you're in the car, and let's say a fairly regular basis too,
Yeah.
because one day you may have a bad day when things are not going well for you, but I think it's good to be able to observe somebody on a fairly consistent basis, let's say at least once a week or so. So one possible tip for the community is, if you can accompany your aging mom or dad or granddad or grandma to the grocery store, say once a week, and help them with their shopping, and while you're at it, just kind of keep a very close eye on their ability to drive and see whether or not there are any changes in behavior over time.
Right. Well, let's talk some about driver training. Let's say that it's, you know, recommended to an elder that maybe they have their driving checked out, or that they get some training. We know that AARP has a great driver training program. Can you tell us some about that?
Sure. The driver safety program has been around since the 1970s. It actually started in the late 60s and has evolved over time. I think it used to be 55 Alive, if you remember. But now it's just simply called the AARP Driver Safety Program, and it's the first and largest driver education program in the country for people.
I think we've got a slide
for people
that.
above the age of 50, right. One of the things that we like to talk about is the effect of this program is, as this statistic indicates, that overwhelming number of participants do end up changing at least one key driving behavior as a result of having taken this course. So people ask us, what's the effect of this course? And we can talk about what some of the content is, but this is a nice effect or result of having taken the course, that people do respond to education on an ongoing basis. You know, it's like, in a sense, you want to think of it as riding a bike. You know, you never forget how to ride a bike from when you're young. You want to think the same thing when you're in terms of driving a car, but in fact, changes in road conditions, changes in traffic laws, changes in your own physical and cognitive abilities, all of these things can make driving as you get older more challenging. As a result, a driver education program like this can really help refresh your driving skills and make you a safer, more attentive driver. As you can see here, over 13 million people across the country have completed this course, and we've got courses virtually on all islands, so it's a matter of deciding or finding out which island or which area has a course near you, and then you can contact the instructor.
When you talk about this course, is this like a 1 week class or 6 weeks class? How many hours in? How do you organize this time?
Good question. It used to be a much longer course. They've distilled it down now to a very condensed 4 hours. And so it really is 4 hours very, very well spent, and you can be in and out of there. And you, by the way, you don't have to take a test at the end, so nobody's going to say pass or fail or anything like that. It's simply in a relaxed atmosphere, absorbing as much of this information as you can, and then acting accordingly. You can also take this course online, which is, I think, increasingly a popular way to get information. But I still am one of those people who kind of prefers the old-fashioned, go to a classroom, interact with people, and discuss it with an instructor, and kind of get the most out of that face-to-face interaction. Either way, whatever you're comfortable with.
So it's really for your own benefit. Nobody's going to really test you.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And it's not a course in which you actually get behind the wheel of a vehicle. It's all classroom kind of discussion. And an instructor will walk you through the steps of how you can operate your car more safely. How, for example, you can adjust your car and perhaps adjust your behavior for the kinds of physical changes that are taking place over time. I mentioned vision a while back. You want to be mindful of how your vision, how your hearing, and how your reaction time are changing, and then adjust yourself, your behavior accordingly, or the vehicle itself. One thing that we probably won't have time to discuss during this program is an adjunct to the driver safety program is something called the Car Fit program, where you can actually drive into a parking lot. AARP will do this with occupational therapists.
Right.
Drive into a parking lot, and in 20 minutes, the occupational therapists will help you adjust your automobile, make sure your seat is in the right position, lumbar support, that you're not so close to the steering wheel so that when this, heaven forbid, the airbag employs, that you're not going to be injured. All of these little things can help, increase safety behind the wheel. But that's not part of the driver safety program. Getting back to the content of the program itself, the program helps you to minimize dangerous blind spots. It helps you to monitor your own skills and capabilities. Using devices properly is really important. We all know the importance of seat belts, making sure that you're not too close to an airbag, and employing other technologies. Hands-free devices, obviously, when you're, for those of us that have to use the phone in the car, absolutely never want to use, hold up a cell phone next to your ear anymore. You can use a hands-free device to do that. That's all part of the important elimination of distractions that we talked about earlier.
Is there a cost to the program?
Yes, there is. For AARP members, the program is $12. For non-members, it's $14. But that cost goes all to the materials. So you come away with a workbook and materials that you can take home and look at again and again.
Oh, good. So there's something to refer back to.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all of that cost goes to the materials of the program itself.
How effective is the program?
Well, that statistic I mentioned earlier is probably the most revealing, that 97% of people surveyed who've taken this course over time said that they have made one key adjustment or change in their behavior that they think has really helped make them a safer, better driver. Now, that could be something as simple as making an adjustment to the mirror, side mirrors, your seat adjustment or whatever, or it could be something more significant like whenever you are prescribed a new medication, you discuss in great detail with your doctor what the effect of that medication might have upon your driving abilities, and of course, bottom line, whether you should even be driving at all.
Now, I think you have a phone number and a contact information that we could share with the audience on a slide that perhaps you can share that with us as well.
Happy to do that. Thank you, Cullen. There are two ways that you can find out about a physical AARP driver safety course near you. If you prefer telephone, we recommend that you call 1-888-AARP now. And that is, you're not going to actually speak to a person. What this is it's an automated system. It'll ask you to put in your zip code. So you punch in your zip code. It will then connect you to a Hawai'i recording, and the driver safety program instructor they'll take your information and then call you back later to schedule a course within a week or so.
Now, is this course only offered on Oahu or statewide?
Great question. It's actually offered statewide, and there are separate driver safety coordinators for each island. So Oahu has one, Kauai has one, Big Island, and Maui. Okay. There are even instructors on Molokai, I believe.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned it's online also.
Right, and thank you for reminding me of that, because you can, if you prefer not to do this by phone, you can simply go on your computer and go to aarp.org/find-a-course, and then you punch in your zip code, and it'll give you a list of course offerings on your island during a given month or whatever.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, we'll come back to that number later on as well.
Thank you.
But perhaps you could also share with us some driving tips on safety, for safety purposes. You've mentioned some of these, but are there other things that come to your mind?
Well, for AARP's perspective, I think a lot of it comes to basic common sense kind of knowing what your limitations are as you're getting older. Let me give you a few examples. Most of us, as we get older, above the age of 65, not that that's old anymore, indeed, 75, 85, people can be perfectly functioning, but a lot of us have less of an ability to see clearly as it gets dark at night. So one simple thing you can do is limit your driving time at night. Or you can also try to limit the length of the drives that you take. Be familiar with the road that you're going on if you're going to the grocery store or to the drugstore.
Mm-hmm. How about talking about that difficult topic of when to stop driving and how families can have a discussion with an elder and their family about stopping driving?
It's without question the most emotionally fraught topic that we find AARP when we talk to groups of people, not only older folks, but younger folks as well, who are very, very concerned about the welfare of their aging parents and grandparents. We have free booklets such as this We Need to Talk, which is a publication that you can get by calling 888-687-2277. I'm sorry, we don't have a slide for that.
How about repeating that number?
888-687-2277, and you can ask for this We Need to Talk brochure, which outlines in great detail the way, step by step, the way families can go about broaching this very, very difficult topic. I'll give you one example if we still have time. We tend to believe that spouses prefer to hear from each other rather than from a child or from somebody who is not as close to them. Not that children aren't close. Mm-hmm. But historically, for example, husbands would feel more comfortable being gently told that, honey, maybe it's time to talk to your doctor about whether it's still safe to drive. Hearing it from the spouse first, rather than having everybody in the family sort of gang up on you.
Yes.
You really have to, as a family, create a strategy that works and meets the kind of the dignity issue in the
That's a
family.
good point.
Yeah.
How about alternatives? So you're now agreed to stop driving. What alternatives do I have?
Well, one thing I wouldn't recommend is skates or a skateboard as you get older. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're going to have a fall and break a hip or something like that. But a lot of people as they get older find walking and even bike riding to be an enjoyable, and if it's safe, that is, if you're in a neighborhood where there's not a lot of congestion and so forth, it can be a great way to get to the drugstore if you need to fill a prescription or something. We in Honolulu here have a great bus system. Obviously, the bus system is a great way to get about when you don't feel that you can drive anymore. And public transportation, the handy van and so forth, these are all great alternatives.
How about one last tip for our viewers?
I have to come back again to this being not so much an individual decision as it is a group decision. It's something that families really need to kind of prepare to talk about over time. Even long before it's time to hang up the keys, you should begin talking about, well, Mom, Dad, what happens if or when? And one way to start it is to say, you want the community and yourself to be safe, right? That's one way to start the conversation.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's just really quickly have that phone number one more time. I think on the screen again, very quickly. We've got that
For the driver safety
for
program?
the driver safety program.
Yeah, that's an easy to remember number. It's 1-888-AARP now.
Okay.
And that will take you to a directory where you can put in your zip code and find out where a course is being offered near you.
Okay, and then
Wonderful.
all the other information I'm sure we can get from that source as well. So I think that's about all the time that we have. Again, thank you very much for being
Thank
with
you.
us on Kupuna Connections. This is Bruce Brotok from AARP. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's very important information about driver safety.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Aloha, everyone.